A warm welcome you back to this show, ThinkTech Wise Humane Architecture. This happening to be the 356th show already. We're broadcasting live as always but now from 3 different locations in the world. We have you, Inge Roecker from Vancouver, Canada. Welcome.
Thank you.
We have you, Jay Fidell, our man who makes this all work for us, back in Honolulu, Hawaii. And we have me, Martin Despang, back in Munich, Germany. And we're going to talk about not the place where we've been for the last 20 or so shows, but we got to explain why, because this used to be Barcelona and will continue to be for a little longer. And Barcelona is all over the place. You were interested, Inge, as well, in saying, hey, send me stuff you guys been talking about. So all the magazines, all the media in our field in architecture, this is Dwell magazine, who's a more popular magazine here, says, as you can read, why is Spain's social housing so well designed? And Jay, this image looks familiar because our guest, Pedro Capriata, has just shown that project to the audience last time we were on air a few weeks ago. So, but the picture that's actually and this is from the Dwell app that pops up on your phone if you have that app. But the picture on the right is the opening page, and the project you see down there is actually not from Barcelona. And it's actually, this is the very catchy title of that. It says, if Western Canadian cities were a family, Victoria would be drama queen, Vancouver's hippie granola kid's sister. Easygoing and low maintenance for the new class of remote workers emerging out of the pandemic, this coastal city presents the allure of a promised land where you can get more bang for your buck, maybe even snag a little property and still have some world-class restaurants just down the streets. But we're not going to that hippie granola kid's sister, but we go to the other sister, and that's where you are, Inge, and we go to your Vancouver, where you have been for a long time. You're actually Canadian-German, and you are both an academic at the University of British Columbia and as well an architect practicing in Vancouver. And we're very interested in your view of what actually the 3 of us share in the locations we are, where finding shelter housing is a struggle. In each of the cities we're broadcasting from, we have a similar problem. So this was me after we're, speaking about myself, getting up in age, Inge, and we kind of were like kind of miscommunicating about when I come and what, and so anyways, after our second try, I took the train to you, which was great. So this is the train. So Jay, they have a train too, but they had it for a while. We're just starting to have, trying to have one. So then I was taking these pictures and you see similarities, you see mountains. And just for the audience, I would say it's fair to say, climatically speaking, that actually Vancouver is for Canada what Hawaii is for the continental United States, because that's the place where you can get the least frost bites, usually, principally speaking. So there's more than one similarity between us, and that's why it makes it so exciting. And we also see a similarity because there's stuff popping up there that we actually don't want to talk about. And Inge, give us a clue why we don't want to talk about these characters that we actually know so well, Jay, because they're popping up in Honolulu left and right as they pop up with you in Vancouver. And why don't we want to talk about them necessarily, Inge?
Well, why I don't want to talk about them is because they're really a sign of capitalism, and I call them a hotel typology. And I've heard other people talking about that they follow the hotel but make larger units and sell them as homes. But what we are experiencing right now, and that is totally new the last few weeks, that the price drop of the tower you're just showing, all this kind of capital A towers, has dropped by 30%. And we are, as you said, we are in midst of a housing crisis, and these apartment buildings are, they're not empty, but a quarter is probably empty apartments.
Yeah. And you were talking specifically about on the very left top. This is by BIG, Bjarke Ingels Group. And Jay, we and everyone in Honolulu, there's a show quote below there that we've been throwing in that we were almost got a BIG. And they're one trick pony. I don't know where it comes from in your case. We don't want to be too gossipy, but one should, because the kind of the ways they sell these is kind of a little ridiculous, and it's kind of a one trick pony thing. For us, it was a pineapple, and for you guys, it's whatever. And we were talking that we're saying it's designed by seismic forces, but it's actually the opposite. When you make a tower, Jay, you don't need to be an architect to understand when the tower is narrower at the bottom and wider at the top, that would be, for earthquakes, you turn this around. You have the Trans-American Pyramid in San Francisco that, was holding up, fairly well. And that's how gravity goes. And so this is all sales pitchy as far as we are concerned. The other one in the middle there is by Kengo Kuma, that my Doctor of Architecture student Hannah was doing her praxis with, and she got that intel and said she knows why Kengo, I mean, not that one would care for the what's it called, the Pulitzer Prize, help me out, the Pritzker Prize, right? The Pritzker Prize for architecture, that the juries are seeing that there is more sales pitch, more pretending than actually being. So these are, and the one on the right is from that picture that I took from the train that I enlarged. You told me it's actually part of a shopping mall, right? Topping that off. So we're saying these things have not helped to solve that problem. They're actually, as you point out, not even meant to be. They're actually there, quoting you, Jake, for capital concentration and capital multiplication, as you said, Inge, and that's what they're for, and that's why we don't want to talk about them. So what we want to talk about is something that we already announced some shows ago, you, Jay, and I, as you can see on the show quote on the right, and you can see yourself, Inge, there, looking at your project. And share with me yesterday when we were on the phone and coordinating here, Zoom links and things, what surprised you, statistics that you had just heard of a third each. What is that?
Yeah, I looked up the demographics, the census, and they're from 2021, but I think that's fairly recent. And I was very surprised that when you look by people, that we have exactly 1/3 living in towers, 1/3 living in apartment buildings below 6-story, and 1/3 living in single family dwellings. That totally surprised me, because I thought we talk, as you do probably too, as we talk in North America about the missing middle, and that we do not have apartment buildings as we did at the last turn of the century, like the 5-6-story walk-ups. It seems to be the last 30 years has been totally erased. And for us, at least in Vancouver or in Canada, we erased all building code, all zoning, we erased everything that this typology is not possible. And so that is kind of my work, but I come from, and that's maybe the bridge to the towers we saw before, that I think the towers are bought by people who want to invest and park money. And you see this, that the big tower or all this kind of prestigious big towers, they're usually advertised internationally. And the money is international money flowing in as investment. Where when we have the housing crisis we have is not an investment crisis. It's a crisis that we don't have homes for people who want to make it a home for a lifetime. And as we have no more single family land, we zoned recently that every single family lot you can do 6 units. So single family home doesn't really exist anymore. But we have now, in my opinion, we have to have a discussion. What are we replacing it with? And the traditional thing is that you erase a whole block and then you do a podium and two towers. That is the model which they all like to do here. And I think we have to, and it's not just me, there's many scholars here who go like, how do we develop a missing middle typology? And what I realized, as much as my research is on health and well-being, that I wanted a courtyard typology and people have more smaller communities. I realized the stumbling blocks, and that was we came 2 years ago to say we have to change the National Building Code, because right now, and I heard that in Hawaii you don't have that problem, we need 2 stairs after 2 floors. So no developer would build anything in this scale, because you would need 2 means of regress, 2 staircases. And when you have lot sizes of 25 foot and 33 or 50, 2 staircases make no sense. So I realized, even so my research is more on the social well-being, that I had to do some work in the technical part to be able to build how I want to build. So this project is part of we got research money from the government, and we have 10 projects across the country, each province 1 or 2. And we show as pilot projects before the code change, what that could look like. Yeah.
Inge, you mentioned before there was now a reduction in price. Is that across the board? And why? Is that because of the tariff war? What's happening to the economy that should allow for that kind of discount?
It's because nobody who needs housing can afford the towers. And the rental income of these investment properties doesn't pay the mortgage anymore because of the interest. So all of a sudden we are in this, that it does not make sense as an investment property, and people who want to buy a home are, I don't know, not interested in living in a tower, or also cannot afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Martin, can I ask Inge one more question?
Of course, all the time, even more than one.
So we have homelessness, houselessness, really, in Canada as in the US, in every major city. Mm-hmm. And you can look around the world and you find homelessness and houselessness there too. But if I gave Canada $4 trillion, and I asked Canada to please invest that in homes for people who can't otherwise afford them, in order to deal with the problem of homelessness and houselessness, what could you do with that? And by the way, the $4 trillion is what Trump is trying to get out of Congress, so he can spend it on the wealthy and on the military. But if I gave you $4 trillion, tell me how you would spend it to improve well-being for the people of Canada.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I want to trace back to say, I don't think we have a housing crisis. We have a crisis that the income on the lower income spectrum, the minimum wage, is not working out that you can afford housing, renting. And I think similar to the United States, I think so. We have, at least I know Canada, we have not invested in that kind of housing, which, if we are not doing anything about raising the minimum wage, so that's working, we need to provide housing. I think this is kind of the 2 ways. And then, of course, we have the same problems the US has too. We have a crazy drug problem. And so I think it's very complex, but I think it's not as much a housing crisis that we taking so much money away from people who do kind of jobs which we need, but we don't pay for them properly. So that amount of income does not work to get housing. So if you give me the money, I probably would not spend it all on just building housing. I probably would look for creating programs or creating situations where people make more money, because I don't think what people want is handouts. People want opportunities to be able to afford their housing.
Yeah, I think we must be related, Inge.
Oh, good.
Well, that's why you, before the show, if I might share, you asked if you can be adopted. And I think you asked that question actually a lot before, Jay, and it didn't go anywhere. I think in this case, yeah, we got the closest we ever got. So, so Inge, this is you opening the pages in your office home, in which you had just moved back or moved to. Working, and we're going to show that project soon, but you were here basically opening the drawings. And so explain a little bit more, and also the challenges you have with this kind of innovative approach with the authorities, please.
Sure. So first of all, what my mission is, I'm really asking, and go back to the last question, what can we do as architects to make a building cheaper? And the bigger picture is, I don't think we can solve the problem by making a building cheaper. I think that is not the option here. But we can still do whatever is possible, and also answering our environmental crisis. So number one, I call how I develop the projects as a reductionist approach. And that means I look very carefully to streamline anything. And I won't let marketers figure out, I want the bathroom here, I want this here. No, it's all lining up. So the technical things are in the most efficient way. And same about material choices, same about everything, that I would ask, how can I make this with the least amount of resources? Does that get me cheaper? I'm not sure, but it's definitely getting what we need to. We can also not forget, in all the affordability, that we have to deal with the environment, because that would make it more expensive on the long run. So then when you look at this building and its kind of elongated form, it's because it's an urban block which is 33 feet wide and 135 deep. And so my first challenge was that the city said, we did not envision a courtyard in the block. And if you do a courtyard, we want to have the bedrooms to the courtyard. And that is all against everything I believe. I want to create this 18-unit community around the courtyard where the kids can play. And that makes no sense to have the bedrooms to the shared space. Everyone would have the blinds down and you would not really use it. So I said the bedrooms have to go to the outside. And of course, with my minimalist idea, it's clear that this way I can manage to do a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom, because we go in, we don't need a hallway on the entry side. And I get 1 more unit per floor than what the city wanted me to do, in a better quality. But it took me a whole year to go through this process before I even touched the single stair. Because when you look at this now, I would have, in the empty space of the court, I would have to put another stair in to be code compliant. And that means, yes, then I have no more courtyard. And yes, then I can only do the bedrooms to the inside, because it's not enough light to actually live. So, okay, that was a long answer.
No, this is a good one. So what, dear DPP, the Department of Permitting and Planning, don't be afraid of, only be afraid of value engineering of people who have a capitalist, greedy approach. They will value engineer where it hurts, while responsible architects and planners as you will really engineer value where it makes sense. So the keyword is deregulating for people who you can trust. And obviously maybe not for people who you can trust. And this is a big thing in the 3 cultures and country we're working in, that also in Germany. And by the way, Inge, you also work in Germany. We will talk about that. So you have experience in both cultures and in both countries. And this is also in Germany right now to try to wrap the arms around the scarcity of not enough units, to say we make it easier. But there's always looming then, okay, someone is going to take advantage of that. Like you remember, Jay, with Christine Camp, the discussion of windowless bedrooms in high rises converted from, and you're moving the head in the right direction, Inge. This is exactly what happens, right?
Yeah.
And developers take advantage of that misery, and they do these dirty deals of windowless bedrooms, and that's just wrong. While what you're doing is right, to say the bedroom it goes there where it belongs, and that's basically the way. So I want to, now people might say, okay, all right, looks good on paper, but is this really working? So we're moving on to showing how it's really working. And I want to just do a flashback of how we met many moons ago, when I was shortlisted at your university and you happened to be my search committee chair. And then I was on the airplane, and the guy next to me was from Vancouver, and he started to chat me up, and he said, well, one place you shouldn't go, this is Chinatown, because this is all like, talking, Jay, homeless, druggies, don't go there. So then I arrive, and the next thing you do on my first day, which we all have scripted protocols, right? 9 a.m. it starts, and you're going to meet this person or that group and blah, 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 right? You said, Martin, no, it starts at 7, 2 hours earlier, and I take you to my most current project, which was in Chinatown, and that was a pharmacy for drug-addicted women. And I saw how you wrapped, who was the head of the Hells Angels, if I recall correctly, and he came on his Harley, and to make a living, he was an electrician, and you basically wrapped him around your finger to get, I think it was $20,000 for donating it to the project. So that's what you do, and that's amazing. And so ever since, Chinatown has been your home, and also literally speaking, because this project here is your project that you developed for Chinatown. So tell us more about the background, how it all came about. And we're sitting there getting ahead of ourselves. We're sitting in your kitchen, in your office home, but tell us about the background of the project.
Yeah. So I'm here 20 years now, and right when I came, UBC asked me, would you like to work with the Chinatown community? And I thought, ooh, very exciting. And I never forget my first day walking around. Before I went to UBC, then I thought, okay, I need to do a tour so I at least know a little bit about it. And I went to the cultural center, and they had students giving tours. So we walked around, and I saw the traditional, which is a Chinese shop house merging the Victorian architecture, similar to my building. And I said, oh, wow, interesting. They have cross ventilation, and they have everything we do now. And I said, this is amazing, because you don't see this anywhere else. They all have windows which don't open. And he said to me, oh, don't look at this. We have air conditioning now. And he brushed me off about how unimportant that is and how old it is. And I never forget this, because I went like, oh my God, where have I arrived? Because I already kind of built all this passive housing in Germany. So I was really excited to work with the community. And then the building you just referred to here is a 25-foot lot. And the city had paid me, I think, 3 or 4 studies, and a lot of money. And every time, and we had to do also after my design, it would go to a quantity surveyor. It would always come back not possible. And I go like, how can that be? I'm talking about, I called it acupuncture, like putting new buildings in the same fabric and not doing the erasing, because if you erase 2 more blocks, there's nothing left of Chinatown and do the towers. So then I said, I built like this kind of mid-block, these mid-sized buildings in Germany since quite a while. Why would it be not possible? So I had to develop it myself, and I had so much research. So I developed it, and then I looked for people to actually build it, and they looked at me, why are you doing this? And anyway, it worked, and it was sold. It was better times, but it was sold without a showroom, without anything, just a laptop in the bar next door, and with local people, not so much investors, lots of architects too, but it was sold long before we broke ground. And one more thing I wanted to say, you see the building next to it, it's stepping back. And so somewhere in the 70s, they developed guidelines where they said, on the back, you have to step back 6 meters. On the front, I call it wedding cake, you have to step up back. So if you have a 25-foot lot and you have to carve back on the short sides, you cannot develop the building. When you look around, and we don't have an image here, but all the historic buildings are going straight up, have a big cornice, very proud. They didn't let me do the cornice on this one, but I opened the floodgates that more people could develop this, and the next ones they would even allow to have cornices again. But so that's kind of, I call my office research and practice, and I'm always taking on projects which are like kind of looking at an issue, why we are not doing something which in a way everyone wants, or a lot of people talk about they would like it, but there are rules in place which don't allow it. So here it was more zoning than building code. And I put a scissor stair in instead of a single stair, which until Canada, I had no idea what that is. And do you have it in Hawaii? It's 2 stairs next to each other. And so you save a little bit of space.
You do. So let's have you walk us in. So here we see the context, not quite as you were hoping, but you get the point. And so this is, again, for everyone in Hawaii, we have a Chinatown. It's historic. It's fewer stories. It's mostly 2 stories. But we have, there's similarity obviously here. So you see what one would call gritty here. So it has, has patina and has charm, and it doesn't look like it's all prettied up. And your building also, I mean, you were saying, when things get old, you see there's some issues with the shutters, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. That's actually things you're really on a budget. I mean, we're talking about here, a bunch of very much like a cooperative that we've been talking about a lot, Jay, and that's this thing in Barcelona where you build it from bottom up as a grassroots thing. You get the people together and they want together. And explain a little bit about also the social success of it as you share it with me. I mean, we see you with your doggy, and we have one picture where we see it more in close up, but so what's like the, many architects are, by the way, afraid to live in what they create because they think, okay, it's going to bite them back, and then all the people are coming constantly and complaining, and so you won't ever find peace, in your building. But your experience is quite positive, right?
Yeah, and it's 28 units, and so I wanted to say one more thing about what we said before. So you see the 25-foot lot, and ours was 9-story. This was upzoned, which in the meantime is downzoned again. But historically, it was the 25-foot grid from 1920 and 6-story high. So anyway, so now going to the socialness. It's very interesting. Of course, not all 28 units are same kind of socialness, but there's probably around 10 units where we also have drinks together on the terrace. We just started this in year 8 or something, but we talk to each other, we do things together. And I think it's interesting because when a building like this is made for people as homes, as living there, it's a very different dynamic than a tower where it's all about just paying rent, including that everything is stripped in the hallways of no personalization. That's what I call it, hotel typology. It's purposely from the strata top down made that you do not talk to neighbors because they want everything to look the same on the spreadsheet. Where smaller buildings like this, you can create community. And it's, for example, we had so much trouble on the side wall. You see it a little bit on the bottom, graffiti. And the neighborhood is rough. So we have people from the city going around every day, spraying over graffiti daily. So then we said, and you see it in the forefront too, we said, why don't we let some community artists do a mural? And it's interesting, murals are respected. We did get no graffiti. So we got money from the city, and I asked, our community, we had to sign papers and whatever, but not a problem, right? Because we decided on it, and we let some community artists put a mural on, and we have no more problems. And the more we're doing these things together, of course, the more we feel like a house community, and we don't have to do everything together, but we are friends enough that we take care of each other. And if there's any problem, we look out for each other. And I think that is the big difference between these gigantic projects where you always expect there's someone to take care of everything, compared to here, where it's more like we are a community and we take care of each other.
Absolutely. So invite us further in here.
Oh.
And explain a little bit. Yeah, and sorry for, I showed it to you before, so you could have said no, but it's all good because this shows you live there, right? And we also have to say, we don't have to apologize at all, but you just moved in, so the pictures are even more really unplugged. Explain the way how you even get into the unit. Explain a little bit what we see. I'm interested in what the ceiling is made out of as a sort of a tectonic detail, but also the circulation and things like that.
Yeah. So what you see in the background is a little courtyard, and we are on the 9th floor. And from the elevator, I have an outdoor walkway, which is probably not so uncommon in Hawaii, uncommon in Canada. Mm-hmm. And then we get to this little courtyard. There's a glass door, and I can go into the kitchen, and straight ahead is another glass door, gets you into the living room. So interesting also because I'm only 25 feet wide, I'm having left and right windows due to this little courtyard. That's the gray behind is the party wall to the neighbors. But I have basically a townhouse in the sky. And of course, on the top, it's extremely special in terms of the lighting condition.
Yeah, so there's a generosity of space and place afforded by scarcity of simple rugged materials that all together give you a nice talk a little bit about the horizontal slabs and what you see from looking at the ceiling from below and what it sort of results in and when you look at it from above on the floor.
So here you see the floor, a concrete floor, and that's the topping. That is the structure. There's nothing on top. I think you have a picture where you see the ceiling, no?
It's this one. I see it here on my view.
Mine was too big. I didn't see that, sorry. Yeah. So what you see, we didn't do this from the beginning, but then when we went into construction, my contractor, so I can't take credit, he said, because we built the whole site, we have no site for crane. So the crane was actually where the elevator later came. And so what you see on the ceiling is actually a metal roof normally used for industrial buildings. And so because we are so narrow, only 25 feet, and here is the terrace even less, we put that in and poured the concrete. So we have no wood to do the formwork, no formwork. We just put in, pour concrete, that's it. extremely simple, like you do an industrial building. And
Yeah.
we all left that. There's no carpet, there's nothing, just the rough kind of building, just
Yeah.
painted.
And I would respectfully disagree when you said I can't take credit. I said yes, you can, because you create a culture that you consider the other contributors as the contractors as not people you look down on and you're constantly yelling at. Sometimes you have to, sometimes you get in trouble, as it is in life, but principally you respect them and you actually invite them to enrich, right, your project with these clever ideas that are not preconceived by you, but you create this, climate and culture of inclusivity, I would call it. So that way, I think you can take the credits, of course, not for the decision, but for the encouragement.
I find that's really maybe not a good thing, but on my Canadian projects, which I don't have as much as than in Germany, I'm scared until they are built, because they're always at the edge that someone could say, no, we are not doing it. So all of them are bringing me nearly to my end, right? Because I have to hold on. As soon as you're not going to go status quo and want to change something, it is extremely hard. And I feel fortunate in my position as a researcher that I'm only doing one project at a time, and I can do this. I think, to be honest, I think a regular office would probably not have the time and stamina to kind of sit it out.
Well, this
You
is
know, I have a question, Martin.
yeah.
So this is sensitive to the culture of Vancouver and Canada. So the first part of my question is, could you build this in Toronto, or would you have to go through all kinds of regulatory approval, permitting issues? Could you build another one in Vancouver, or would you have to, go through those same kinds of issues? Did they change the rules for you when they saw it was a success, or you have to go uphill every single time you have a project like this?
So no, as soon as it's once going through, others can follow and they get grandfathered in. They're not always they change the rules right away, but if someone else wants to do the same, they let it do. But now I'm telling you a bit of a funny thing. It was so painful to get this project done. And then afterwards, when the city does any lectures anywhere, they always have my projects in and show it. And then I told Martin just recently, I was invited to a podium discussion for and against the single stair. And of course, I was for, and the fire department was against. And they brought this project in as an example, not knowing that I'm the architect. And so I told them, yes, this is great, but I needed so many alternative solutions. That was extremely funny. So yeah, when you break the ice once, it's easier for others to follow. Yes.
So is this rental, or do you buy a unit like this? And if it is rental or you buy, what kind of expense are we talking about?
It's condo. And back in the days, this is now 10, did I say 10, 40, 11 years old. It was, I think, 890 a square foot. So the small units were extremely affordable, and they were gone within 2 days. The small units, so there's always a big unit on each end, a bigger unit, and two very small. They're only, I think, under 600 square feet, one bedroom. And they were under 300,000 back in the days, but they're now worth 500,000.
Has there been a lot of buying and selling, and people spin them and try to make a profit on them?
Not so much. Not so much, no. In 10 years here and there, one was changed, but there's I mean from the beginning, and I would say there's 3-4 people who are in from the beginning, and yeah, it's a long-term community.
That's great. That's really remarkable because community has to last for a while. You can't have people coming and going all the time.
No, and I find this is where it's important that you have to mix, because larger units are usually more stable than smaller units. And I think if you have at least minimum a quarter of people who are more stable, and then the next quarter maybe changing every 6-8 years, you have enough stability that some can change. That's kind of my learning.
Thank you.
So while you're talking, I keep moving here. You see your doggy down there as promised.
Mm-hmm.
And you also see that when you're an architect, you live with architectural models in your living room here, as you can tell. And so this is a very sort of prime location. Obviously, you got the mountains in the back, and you have stunning views, as we will see when we walk more up to the roof terrace soon. But again, as thanks to your questions, Jay, this is all very low key. This is all very doable. This is all very affordable. So because it's culturally driven and not commercially, as we keep saying. So this is the situation here. Again, you just having moved your office back into it because you had your office in an office space, and now you're moving back. So this is here. This is us architects living with architectural models. You should quickly, and we might have to at some point soon let you go, because you have tri-semesters, if I spell that correctly. So you're in graduation and have to reconvene the ceremony. So in a couple of minutes, we have to let you go, but only because having you back next time, because this is obviously too exciting. But maybe in a couple of words, a few sentences about the project that we're seeing there in the model, because we talked about that quite a bit as well. And maybe we can feature that more in some follow-up shows, Inge.
Yeah, so that's the middle project that is also finished. Took me 10 years. And because I was probably 5 years ahead of the curve about putting 6 units on one site. And I got so much, like, people were so upset about it because it's 2 lots, but there was the first dairy of Vancouver on it, a historic building. And so because of renovating a historic complex, I could do 13 units on 2 lots. But people were super upset, and it took me 10 years, about 6 years to go through the city process, because then people were saying that is unfair if you have 2 sites and because they're fairly big units, some are 2,000 square feet. And they said, so then I had to pay the first 500,000 amenity contribution to the city. So now think about it. We talk about affordability when we do 13 houses, and I could make it more affordable because, I don't have so much land price and I'm renovating whatever, but then I have to pay, I think it was $500,000 on a community amenity, and then you have another 250,000 for the building permit. So basically you park your first million for nothing than paperwork. But anyway, it was a very interesting project because also ahead of the curve. And again, this is when I learned about, the first one was zoning was the problem, that I couldn't do it. And I didn't even realize that the building code was also the problem. I used the scissors there. Here I realized that the building code is a problem because I don't know what you have, but we have a building code part 3 and part 9. And part 9 is that it's for single family homes. And the distance where you can have windows to the next building is so large that I couldn't have any windows. So then I had to build a little roof from one building to the next to connect the two, to make it actually be a part 3 building. It looks like one, even so I mean, it looks like one on paper, not in real life. So I have the higher code, but then the higher code comes with so much extra money, which is insane. And so I realized that if we want to do the missing middle, or I call it the emerging middle, there's a lot of building code, zoning easier to change, but there's a lot of building codes we have to look and adapt if we really believe in doing it. Because, and then I understand where I always hear the industry saying, you can't do it, you can't do it, but nobody ever said why you can't do it. I always heard like, you can't do it. And then I realized that it's all homemade problems, that we put ourselves in building codes, which are maybe made sense at some time, but they don't make sense anymore, and we have to change.
That's so refreshing, Inge. Don't you think so, Jay? I see you're nodding and smiling.
Well, you took the word out of my mouth, Martin. Refreshing. This is all refreshing. I have seen Vancouver over the years as a place where Chinese money comes and they buy multi-million-dollar condo units overlooking the water in these really tall skyscraper kinds of residential buildings. And you say to yourself, I could never afford that. It's only for people who have millions to park here in Vancouver. But this changes everything. And the more you do like this, the better the city will be. So I can only say, as Martin said, it's refreshing and it portends of a better time.
Thank you. And it lifts our spirit up that there is what we're not losing because we have to fight for keeping it, that it makes sense to have people like you in the architectural education who are, which I like to call practicators, who come from practice and they educate. And that's the hybridity. And that is, so well spent public money by the taxpayer that pays your salary, Inge, because the public benefits from it by having been, shown how it works, which you say somehow the private sector that's so only running by money and by greediness is not interested in doing. So this is a perfect proof why you, next door to the United States, do what our capital concentration government is obviously afraid of, because that's all they can think of is capital concentration and getting richer and richer. And this is what everyone, glad what you said, Jay, because you, Inge, bring Vancouver back to what it basically once was, and then got screwed up and ruined for same, slightly different, but principally the same problem, as you said, Jay, and you bring it back full circle to promising. And so it's not just the little sister won over because that's easy, right? You find places in the world or in Canada, which are more remote and are less, where money is less of a pressure, right? But that's the easy way out, right? That's, everyone can do that, run away, and do things where it's more easy. But where it's really complicated, as the reputation that you correctly recall that Vancouver has gotten doing it there is huge. So for that reason, we have to have you back on the show, Inge, to share more about that and give me the material for this project so we can have the audience see more what you were talking about. And until then, we let you go now, as promised, go back to graduation and be you the inspiring practicator you are. Thank you for that. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. I'm happy to come on and show more projects. The other one has also very interesting sustainable issues. We can talk about how, and we just have one of my students graduating, which call it the urban forest, how we actually reuse all the wood we take down. And, because it opens up other questions when we say, yes, we want to have the mid-rise, and we tear down, they're tearing down the houses for the towers too, but tearing down houses which are not at the end of the life, right? Because we want to densify. What are we doing with all this wood? Definitely, hopefully not filling the land a landfill.
No. And this project here that we see, but you will show more, is also an adaptive reuse project, and is reusing its condition. And please share the academic work as well. That's been, Jay, keeping our spirit up for our audience for a decade now, that we always, when we looked at each and every one tower and ended up with the same, that they're just not cutting it, we lifted up the spirit with the emerging generations inspiration. So please do that too. Share that as well. So we're looking much forward to, but now we let you go to graduate them. So
Okay.
see you then in 2 weeks. How about that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks.
Jay,
Bye.
also. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.